Good afternoon, everyone. I am Chris Scott from The Sun. I'm the enterprise editor here, and we're here with State Rep Jim Arciero from the 2nd Middlesex District. Correct, Jim?
That's right.
It's the second. Jim is seeking re-election to his
Be my fourth term.
fourth term. He has two opponents. This is the last in our series of editorial board meetings with candidates for statewide and local office. We'll speak to Jim for about 45 minutes, and then you'll be able to view this DVD or the tape on the Lowell Sun website. We'll give Jim a couple minutes to introduce himself, then we'll ask some questions, and it'll get about a minute to close. So, Jim, welcome to The Sun.
Thank you,
take
Chris.
it away.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate having me in here for a discussion on the issues. I was elected in 2008 as the state representative for the towns of Chelmsford, Littleton, and Westford. I come to this job with a lot of humility, understanding that it's the people that elect me are the ones that I represent. I'm one of the only legislators in the state not to take money from lobbyists and political action committees. I've worked hard on issues of local aid, and I understand that fighting for every last dollar that our communities deserve is my number one priority. It's been difficult to do that. The first few years that I was elected, having over billions of dollars in deficits and dealing with a global economic meltdown. But my work across the aisle, both supporting good ideas, regardless if it's Democrat or Republican, we're able to work on pension reform, EBT reform, transportation reform, ethics reform. As myself, it's been demonstrated here in the Lowell Sun. A lot of the bills that I've supported was passed into law on pension reform to save $5 billion over the next 20 years, something I'm very proud of. I'm very proud of my district. The towns of Chelmsford, Littleton, and Westford are one of the fastest growing high-tech districts of anywhere in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Mass TLC, the Mass Technological Leadership Council, did a report about 6 months ago showing that 1/5 of the employed individuals throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts are associated with the high-tech industry. I've been able to secure over $30 million in infrastructure, tax credits, and transportation improvements in the 2nd Middlesex District to not only improve the infrastructure to accommodate the growing workforce, but to keep businesses like IBM, their largest software lab in North America in Littleton, to make sure that businesses like Red Hat were world-renowned for their work on open source software and internationally recognized for their work. To be able to have them with tax credits of over $3 million expand and grow. So because of the $30 million efforts in infrastructure and transportation and tax credits, we were able to retain and grow over 3,000 jobs in Littleton, Chelmsford, and Westford, and something I'm very proud of, and I want to continue that momentum.
So, you're saying your involvement in the high-tech, the infrastructure improvements there and the industry has created 3,000 new jobs?
Retained and grown over 3,000 jobs. I'll give you a couple of great examples. Mm-hmm. One is Kronos is the largest employer in Chelmsford, over 1,500 employees there in Chelmsford. Working with the Chelmsford delegation, one of the issues that came to our attention from Kronos was they were thinking about moving out of state. North Carolina was a possible destination, California is a possible destination, but one of the issues that they needed improvement on was their public safety features on Route 3A, which connected both of the campuses. By connecting both of the campuses, they were able to invest over $7 million in that facility alone, stay in Chelmsford, and to grow their facility. A business like Red Hat was being lured to one of their other campuses in North Carolina. We worked very hard with the Patrick administration at the time, with Senator Donahue, with Nikki Tsongas, to not only improve the infrastructure there to accommodate the growing workforce, but also to acquire a $3.4 million tax credit to help them add on to their facility there and to bring 180 new employees. These examples are across the board on the 110 corridor. UTC Goodrich was another company that we were able to get about a $4 million tax credit for, and they increased 200 jobs there. And you look at really the high-tech ecosystem for the area. The high-tech ecosystem essentially is all the small businesses that benefit from these high-tech businesses growing and expanding. And through the improvements to, as I said, infrastructure, but also transportation, you are now bringing in the young people from Boston, from all the top-notch universities in the region that may not have access to lend their talents to our region, MIT, BU, BC, etc., who wanted nothing more than a reverse commute. This last year, we were able to get a reverse commute, so we could actually save businesses money by not, shuttling people from the Alewife station in Cambridge, etc. Now we're bringing these folks in to lend their talents to the area.
You mentioned the Chelmsford delegation. By that, I believe you mean Tom Golden.
Tom
correct?
Golden,
Right.
Representative Atkins, Representative Mangle.
Okay. And then you mentioned Nikki Songus.
And Senator Barrett,
And
sure.
you mentioned Senator Donahue.
Sure.
I'm just trying to drill down here a little bit. What did you specifically do as the Chelmsford, Littleton, Westford state rep to help grow those 3,000 jobs? I mean,
Sure.
Politicians are, famous for sharing of the credit, but what specifically did you do?
Absolutely. We'll
Yep.
start with tax credits. Now, these were competitive tax credits that was administered through the Secretary of Economic Development, Secretary Greg Bielecki, and it's a competitive, process in which, I worked hard to build a public and private partnership to not only find out the needs of the businesses, but the needs for the tax credit in order to expand. While doing that, you have to go to bat with the administration in front of the administration and advocate effectively for those monies to be acquired. That happened at Goodrich Company.
Okay.
That happened at Red Hat.
So you appear at a hearing or?
Absolutely,
Okay,
yeah. And advocate and support those monies. In terms of transportation to help businesses grow, one of the biggest issues when I was first elected, sitting down at sort of a high-tech business summit with folks from IBM and folks from Red Hat, was the need for transportation. Littleton already has a commuter rail on Foster Street, which had really abysmal parking. There was only about 150 lots that were legal if they were. What we were able to do this year is, with Senator Eldridge's help, we acquired $2 million to build a new station, including 200.
That's one in Littleton, right?
Yes, that's one of them, including 200 new spaces. But on top of that, Chris, there's something called double tracking. Double tracking essentially is improving the whole Fitchburg line. Now, this was the partnership between Nikki Songus, Senator Kerry at the time, Senator Warren, Senator Brown, and what this was to increase the frequency of trains to create an actual reverse commute. And so we were able to do that. And the issue with a lot of the businesses was spending money to bring these young people into the district. By shuttling them out, we now created a reverse commute to do that.
3,000 jobs is terrific, and the new high tech companies, and if you look at the new market basket that's going in there, that hillside has been completely developed.
Certainly.
Along 495. Westford and Littleton have always been communities that have relished their rural flavor and their rural atmosphere. I remember when Westford crowed about beating back a Walmart. Many years ago, way before your time. But do you find it a delicate balancing act? While you've got to grow jobs, but are you hearing from the other side that it's important to maintain that rural character as well?
I think we have. We have a very robust, and in Littleton and Westford both have a robust community preservation fund in which we just put forward 2 new community fields for lacrosse and soccer in Westford. Littleton is moving for a process on debate on the local level to go towards turf fields. That's something that they're interested in doing. But what we have done, Chris, essentially, is we have focused a lot of the growth on 110. We did smart planning in which we improved the infrastructure. Some of the examples of some of the infrastructure we've improved, $2.7 million for the public safety and the mitigation of 110 right near Red Hat, so they can accommodate their workforce. Also, Minot's Corner, which sees 15 to 30,000 cars per day. We have been working over the last 5 years to improve that, and that's a $4.7 million project, and that just came to fruition, and now the barriers are down, the poles are finally moved. I'm not getting any phone calls from people about possibly driving into a telephone pole. And these are all essential pieces, although they're not sexy. They're essential pieces to the growth of business, and we've been able to concentrate that on the 110 corridor. If you look in Chelmsford, another example was when I talked about the Chelmsford delegation, we worked for a grant to improve public safety lights and really adjoin the 2 campuses, and that allowed Kronos, 1,500 employees, to stay. So when I talk about 3,000 jobs, I say grow and retain 3,000 jobs. So they stayed in Massachusetts and in Chelmsford.
Dave?
I'm just thinking of the Westford and Chelmsford. Their financial, as many people perceive their financial problems, especially in in light of, I don't know if you're aware of what's been going on with the Chelmsford schools and the missing money or money not being expended correctly to the tune of $500,000.
Certainly.
And the perception of some people in Westford that, and Chelmsford, I'm sure, that they're just not getting back in local aid what they should be getting back.
Certainly.
And that's obviously a formula problem as much as anything else.
It is.
What can you say to those people?
There's two pieces to that, Dave. One I would say that over the last 5 years, I was elected in the worst economic recession in 75 years. We all know about that, the global economic meltdown. Instead of increasing local aid, it became to protecting local aid when we had billions of dollars in deficits.
Mm-hmm.
Having to have the constitutional obligation to have a balanced budget every fiscal year, we had to make ends meet. Concentrating on reforms in pension reform in particular, I worked on looking to find more cost savings in municipal health care. Saved a town, first statewide it saved over $100 million, but a town like Chelmsford achieved savings of $1 million per year from municipal health care. What we've done, we've worked on local mandates like the McKinley-Vento Act, which is homeless school transportation. For very oftentimes people that are displaced, that are homeless, will stay in hotels. Chelmsford brought to our attention this whole idea that the transportation cost was almost $40,000 per year for Chelmsford. That was something that we were able to appropriate in the budget and work towards doing. This particular year, a bipartisan coalition of legislators that I was part of, put forward language to start a commission to revisit the Chapter 70 funding formula. There's no mistake that Chelmsford has not gotten the money they deserve, especially since the cuts of the fiscal crisis in 2002 and 2003, and then later in 2008. It's one of my highest priorities to work for every last dollar Chelmsford and Littleton and Westford deserve, and we're going to continue to fight for it.
Just while we're on the topic of Chelmsford for a minute,
Please.
how many reps does Chelmsford have?
4.
4. And that was a result of redistricting in 2010, right?
Yes. It actually used to have Carol Clevin, who
Right.
was the representative for, I believe,
Many
over
years.
16 years.
Yeah.
And in 2000, when they did the redistricting process, they actually carved
Right.
Chelmsford up into 4 reps, not one of them having the majority of their district in the
So
town.
is there any way that you, Tom Golden, Corey Atkins, and who's the third?
David Nangle.
Dave Nangle, can get together and file a bill to do something that makes sense, or do you have to wait for the next redistricting process?
Well, in regards to redistricting, it would have to be the next process.
Okay.
Every 10 years the census,
Right.
Chris, is taken, and
But
redistricting.
you can't do anything in the interim.
Redistricting is done on, through the census and through legislative committee action, and it also establishes through the census the congressional the districts as well. And as you know, U.S. Senate is too, no matter
Right,
what.
right.
For me, when I first ran in 2008, it was one of the biggest issues I heard about when I knocked on doors and I campaigned. I was the only Democrat in the House of Representatives to vote for independent redistricting.
That's right. Yep.
And so,
Yep.
interesting enough, Common Cause and the League of Women Voters, the sort of statewide organization, had a position to support independent redistricting, take the politics out of the process, and have independent individuals come up with a map that would assure fairness. I supported it. I think let's just say I didn't endear myself to leadership in the House of Representatives. My office, which is in the basement now, I don't think they could find it any smaller or any lower, maybe the sub-basement, but I think that was filled. However, it was the right thing to do. It was a promise I made to Chelmsford, and I think they deserve their own seat.
Who has the biggest piece of the 4 of you? Or is it kind of equally distributed?
Dave, no, Tom and I both share 3 precincts.
Okay.
And
There are
Corey
9,
has
right?
2, and Dave has 1.
How do you guys work? I mean, Chelmsford, it's like a 4-way stop sign. The only thing worse than a 4-way stop sign is no stop signs at a 4-way intersection.
We work very well together. Like a couple of the examples of things that we've been able to work on that I've been really excited since I've had the opportunity to represent the town of Chelmsford. One is after 11 years, I was able to get the sound barriers agreed. The governor agreed to the sound barriers on Route 3. That was $11 million in 11 years. And that was something that the Frentwells, a very kind of famous family who advocated for that project right on Twist Road in the North Chelmsford area for many years, worked on it. I had a meeting with the governor where I actually sat down with him and put it right on him. I'm like, okay, Governor Patrick, we've been promising this since you got elected. And he agreed to do it, and that project is up and going. I'm proud of that. The delegation all had a hand in that.
I have no doubt that you guys work well together on that. But from a legislator's point of view, it's got to be a horror show.
It's
Doesn't
not.
it?
No, well, you know, honestly, the synergy between us all is really rich and strong. We get
Yeah.
along very well. We work very well
Yeah.
together. Another great example.
But look at it from the town's point of view. You guys might work well together.
Sure.
But you know, if you're on the board of selectmen there, or if you're
Yeah.
if you're Paul Cohen or somebody, I would think that you want to have someone like Colleen Gary or Lombardo. One town, one person.
one rep. Yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
Well,
I'm
one thing
sorry,
is, you're right. I mean,
editorializing a little bit, but-
I mean, I agree. I mean,
Yeah.
and quite frankly, I wasn't there when they were districted in 2000 and 02.
Yeah, I'm not trying to heap it on your
No,
shoulders.
but when we did
Not at
redistricting
all.
in 2010, I agree with you. That's why I was the only
Yeah.
Democrat that voted that way.
You kind of mentioned your vote on that issue, and on independent redistricting, put you in the doghouse. Are you still in the doghouse? Aren't you kind of and I say this in a complimentary way.
Sure.
You've developed kind of a reputation down there. You're a Democrat. You're known as a Westford guy, but aren't you kind of a maverick a little bit too?
Well, I support good ideas, and by doing that, I've supported issues that are Republican issues and Democratic issues. I crossed, I crossed the party lines, like I said, with pension reform,
Yeah.
with appointment of the U.S. Senator, which was, if you recall, in 2010, when Senator Kennedy had passed, Paul Kirk needed to be appointed, and it became a very partisan affair, and something where national politicians were calling state legislative leaders and rank and files in order to get their votes. That was something I said no to. I thought we should have an election. Issues in terms of not taking money from lobbyists or political action committees. I'm the only legislator, Democrat I know in the House. I don't know if there is one in the Senate, but I've just set myself apart, I think, in the fact that understanding that good public policy is taking all sides of an issue, and I'm pragmatic, I think, more than being a maverick.
Okay, so in terms of leadership and being in the doghouse or not, the State House News Service story moved a story yesterday which indicated that the Speaker has shared his PAC money with a number of local legislators, including you, and Colleen Gary was also mentioned. And DeLeo has also come out and used the word baloney to talk about the Mass Fiscal Alliance advertisements and what they've been doing to try to besmirch your reputation and your record. So maybe you could hit both of those.
One is I don't accept money from PACs, so I haven't seen that check.
Okay.
But I'm sure he wants to help out other Democrats that are in
Right.
races, and I think that's what speakers do.
So would you not accept that?
No, I would not.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, I don't take money from political
Okay.
action committees. I'm not going to start 3
Yeah.
days before the election.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't. But I think I don't think every legislator or everybody in leadership, Chris, knows that. I don't advertise it with people unless they're my constituents or lobbyists that try to give me money. That's just something that makes me a better legislator, makes me more
Right.
independent. I think it's interesting. When I first ran, I had this pledge as well, and I think a newspaper had asked me because a political action committee had sent me money, so they reported that they were sending me money, but I had never received
you
any
never
money.
got it?
I didn't accept it. And your question was, number one, did I see that money? Number two was the whole mass fiscal
Yeah,
fire
so
being baloney.
you've been involved in that, and then
I have.
and then the Speaker came out about a week or so ago and said that this is all baloney.
Right, sure.
So just talk about that a little bit and your response to that, and that must be
Right.
maddening.
Nobody likes negative campaigning. I mean, I personally don't. I'm sure there's some people that do enjoy it. I am not one that
Well, we in the
does.
press like it sometimes.
It makes things a little interesting, I guess. I mean, I think there's so many people that I've talked to that cannot wait for Wednesday. So all of these ads we're seeing on TV about the mass fiscal. I was saying a little bit in the beginning of the show of the taping that it was the day after. I think it was the day after Labor Day. I received my first negative mailing, and I've gotten one just about every other week until my goodness. When I come home to the mailbox, I'm going to double check if there's another one saying that I was for illegal immigrants over veterans, and my brother served 5 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, and just returned home 4 weeks ago. He's an Army surgeon. I'm from a military military family. My father was in the military. My uncle, my brother-in-law. We give with Valor Act 1 and 2, and being on the Veterans Affairs Committee, we give the richest benefits, if you will, for veterans anywhere in the country. So that was hogwash. Another one was the fact on taxes. They said that I voted for the software tax, for the indexing of the gas tax, for the gas tax, etc. That's not true. Anytime I've had the opportunity to vote against taxes, especially directly, I voted against it. Interesting enough, and I do want to bring this up, a lot of the talking points that my opponents used and others have used is the fact that Governor Patrick, after I voted against indexing the $500 million tax to inflation, after I voted against the gas tax, after I voted against the software by stripping it out, after I voted against the conference committee, Deval Patrick, who I don't think there's anyone in this room, thought that Deval Patrick wanted to veto the tax for no money. Deval Patrick was campaigning since January, since his State of the State, that he wanted $1.9 billion. His way to get to $1.9 billion after the legislature voted was to veto the $500 million and to move forward with a lot of the progressive legislators who were fighting the fact that $500 million was not enough. So pragmatically, I voted against the governor from being able to do that. And so then I'm accused of every single tax that was part of that package, and anytime I had a direct vote to vote against it, I did.
So anyone who voted to override his veto,
That's right.
by extension, voted for the gas indexing.
But when we were actually given the opportunity to vote to strip them out, individual basis, myself and 16 Democrats did our best to stop the bleeding, if you will.
A question that we've been asking to some of the candidates that we've been fortunate enough to get into a debate has been this. Which of the ballot questions do you think will have the most far-reaching impact on the state?
If passed?
If passed, and then
I think
how will you vote on that
Sure,
specific question?
sure.
And then we can just talk about the other 3 questions.
Well, since we talked about the gas tax
sure.
indexing, yeah. I would before the repeal. To me, that's consistent with how I've campaigned. It's consistent with how I voted and what I've told my constituents and the newspapers. The bottle bill. I agree with increasing recycling. Right now, if you look at 1982 when the bottle bill was first instituted, there wasn't a statewide recycling program. There wasn't curbside recycling like there is now. Now 83% of households have some sort of curbside recycling. What gives me great pause and great concern is the fact would be the cost on the industry itself, and economically the cost of the industry itself, number one. Number two, we're a border community, and we have to be vigilant. By myself running, representing, Chelmsford, Littleton, and Westford and the greater Lowell area, we're not only hurting the small businesses by expanding the deposits to water and juice bottles, but we're also pushing more business and more consumers over the border. That concerns me from an economic standpoint.
To avoid another 5 cents?
To avoid another 5 cents, or when you buy in bulk, think about going to Costco, etc. You save a lot of money if you're going to go there and buy in bulk. I think lastly, I would rather see money that was invested in increased recycling programs and making sure that 100% of households have increased recycling. The statistic I saw as well said that 1/8 of 1% is the number that I've read and I've heard from a number of different publications. 1/8 of 1% would be the increase in recycling if we expand the bottle bill 5 cents to water and juice bottles. To me, I would rather invest in recycling curbside.
Good. Okay.
That's
So
my point.
so you're obviously against an
against.
expansion of the bottle bill. What about the casinos and earned sick time?
I voted for casinos in 2010 when we had it. At the time, it was a proposal of 3 destination casinos going through a local process, and it'll be a local option, whether that city or town is interested in having destination casinos or slots in some instances. I have to, and I'm sure a lot of individuals that have come in here and spoken to you folks use Springfield as an example. This is a city that wants it, is looking for, ways to economically enhance their region. They have used statistics of 3,000 jobs created from that. We've heard anywhere from 10,000 to 15,000 jobs created throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts by all three destination casinos essentially being up and running. There's a portion of that money that will go to local aid. So I have to also look at retained revenue. 30 to 40, I think 40 being a little high, but 30 to 40% of the money that comes into the casinos in Connecticut and Rhode Island is from Massachusetts. By at least having something in Massachusetts, we'd be able to retain that revenue as well and create jobs.
So,
So that question is phrased, so that's a no on the.
Yeah, that's a no.
question for you.
I would not repeal it.
right. And then the earned sick time.
Earned sick time, I think that every family should have the opportunity to take care of their loved ones, be able to take time off. My problem with paid sick time is number one is small businesses are the drivers of our economy. And to say that 10 and more employees would have to be mandated if you're 10 more employees at a small business, which to me is a small business, you would be mandated to have to pay for paid sick time. I think small businesses being the drivers of our economy need more flexibility. I'm concerned that there would be opportunities that would handcuff the progression of a small business, and to me it's not a one size fits all. Okay. I'm not so sure I could completely endorse Charlie Baker's plan of 50 and more, but the devil's in the details essentially when it comes to ballot initiatives, because it is a one size fits all, and this is what you have unless the legislature doesn't vote in favor of it, which I don't agree with either. But I have too many problems with it.
Okay.
Too many problems with
Sounds
it.
good. Dave?
So what do you, if you're elected, is there anything particularly that you think needs to be done that so far you or some of your colleagues haven't really got
Yeah.
yet?
One issue I'm very passionate, well, let's just say there's two issues I'm very passionate about that I want to work on. One is this last spring I established the second Middlesex high-tech tour. Essentially, that was a business tour that created, it established members of the public sector, the private sector, members of higher education institutions, UMass, Middlesex Community College, as well as representatives from the Chambers of Commerce to continue this momentum and continue this dialogue with the businesses so we can troubleshoot problems, number one, but number two, we can continue this momentum to find out exactly the resources they need to move forward with the creation, as I said, with one of the fastest high-tech districts in the second Middlesex district on the 110 corridor. That's number one. Number two, something I worked on with Senator Eileen Donahue, who chaired the subcommittee on student debt. This is something that I'm very passionate about getting our arms around and remedying, is the fact that 66% of the people in Massachusetts that are students that go to some sort of form of higher education institution or went to a former higher education institution are incurring some sort of student debt. The average for Massachusetts for student debt is $30,000 per year. That can severely handcuff you when you're trying to start a family, to try to buy your first house. You want to start, in the workforce in your first job. And so what we did is we formed a subcommittee and we crisscrossed the state, meeting with individuals from the public sector, from the private sector, from UMass system, from the community colleges and the state colleges, to really understand how we can take this head on and how we can find a way to make college more affordable and accessible for people. Some of the recommendations were financial literacy, is understanding the need for young people and non-traditional students to navigate effectively through all of the paperwork that is associated with going to college and making sure that they get the lowest interest rate and they get the best bang for their buck when it comes to loans. Two, like a dual enrollment program and shorten the time that students are in college. This would be essentially adding AP classes in some of the high schools to the curriculum in terms of matriculating over to higher education institutions to lessen the amount of years that we're in college and accruing debt, but also creating a dual enrollment program Dual enrollment programs allow you to take college courses while you're at school. I know that the science, technology, engineering, and math program that have been very popular at UMass Lowell, and they're connected to the Lawrence high schools as well as of Lowell High, have been effective in getting people out of debt, but also getting them ready for college. And so those are some of the issues that I'm very passionate about. I think student debt and continuing momentum of job creation in my district.
Sounds good. Jim, so why don't you, take a couple minutes and give a closing statement and why people of the second
Sure.
Middlesex district should vote for you, and we can wrap it up.
Thank you. I want to thank Dave and Chris
You're welcome.
and the Lowell Sun for giving me the opportunity to speak to you this afternoon about the issues that I'm passionate about. I come to this job with a lot of humility, understanding that the voters of the second Middlesex district, the voters of Chelmsford, Littleton, and Westford, can hire and fire me every 2 years. I've worked really hard across the aisle to support good ideas, whether that be pension reform, which I've been a leader in, transportation reform, ethics reform, municipal health care reform, to make sure that the tax dollars are spent wisely and that we make prudent and effective cost savings measures moving forward. I care very much about fighting for every last dollar our communities deserve. Coming out of the worst economic recession in 75 years, this last 2 fiscal years, we've been able to increase local aid by $125 million. I'm proud of that. We're moving in the right direction, bringing all of our schools up to foundation level. The fight is not over, it continues, but I'm also excited about the towns of Chelmsford, Littleton, and Westford being one of the fastest growing high-tech regions of anywhere in the state. And through my efforts working in public and private partnerships, we've been able to bring in $30 million of investments in tax credits and transportation and infrastructure to grow and retain over 3,000 jobs. We're going in the right direction. I'm excited and optimistic about the future. I'm optimistic that Money Magazine and World News Report has ranked Chelmsford, Littleton, and Westford as best places to live and raise a family. That doesn't happen overnight. That takes a collaboration between the private sector, the public sector, and local, state, and federal officials. And I look forward to continuing my work and continuing upwards. And I ask for your vote on November 4th. Thank you.
That's a wrap.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.